In 1975, a candy called Pop Rocks hit grocery shelves, and a rumor spread so fast that parents flooded the company with panicked phone calls. Kids begged anyway. Number 3 on this list was pulled from shelves for nearly a decade. Number 11 glowed under the fluorescent lights like a trophy a kid could win. These 25 treats all lived in one magic place, the checkout aisle, positioned at exactly kid eye level and engineered to break a mother's willpower while she counted out her cash. Hit that subscribe button. Let us count down. Number 25, wax bottles. Before anyone worried about what was actually inside, kids paid a nickel for tiny bottles made of colored wax, each one filled with a mouthful of syrup so sweet it made your teeth ache just looking at it. You bit the top clean off, tipped your head back, and got one thick, sugary swallow of fake fruit flavor, cherry, blue raspberry, or that green one nobody could ever name. Then came the part that made no sense, and every kid did it anyway. You chewed the empty wax bottle like gum, working it into a flavorless little ball you kept in your cheek for the rest of the afternoon. A 5-pack cost a dime in 1972. It was barely candy at all. It was mostly a ritual, and kids at the register wanted it desperately, holding the little cardboard tray up while Mom pretended not to see. Number 24, candy cigarettes. This is the one that makes people gasp now, but every drugstore and grocery checkout in America sold them, and every kid wanted a pack. They were chalky sticks of pressed sugar with a red tip painted on the end to mimic a lit ember, packaged in a box that looked exactly like a real cigarette carton right down to the fake brand name. Kids would hold one between 2 fingers, tap the imaginary ash, and blow through it so the powdered sugar puffed out like smoke. It cost a nickel and made an 8-year-old feel impossibly grown up, just like Dad on the porch after supper. Nobody thought a thing of it. They sat on the rack next to the gum and the mints, and mothers bought them without blinking. Try selling those at a register today and see how far you get. Number 23, candy buttons. A long strip of paper dotted with tiny pastel candy buttons, pink, blue, and yellow, arranged in neat little rows. You peeled each one off with your teeth or your fingernail, and the great tragedy of every childhood was that you always got a little paper stuck to the bottom. So you ate the paper too. Everybody did. Nobody admitted it. The candy itself tasted like faintly flavored sugar and nothing more, but that was never the point. The point was the treasure hunt of it, working down the strip, seeing how many you could pry loose clean. A strip cost about 3 cents and lasted a whole car ride home. Those long ribbons hung on the checkout rack like streamers, and a kid could talk Mom into one because how could 2 cents of candy on paper possibly be a problem? Number 22, wax lips. For a dime, a kid could buy a giant pair of bright red wax lips, hook them over their own mouth, and turn into a cartoon for about 20 minutes. They were pure novelty, part costume, part candy, and completely useless as food. You would wear them grinning around the store, talk through them in a muffled voice, make your little sister laugh in the cart. And when the joke wore off, you did the same thing you did with the wax bottles. You chewed them. That waxy, slightly sweet blob ended up parked in your cheek until Mom made you spit it in a napkin. There were wax fangs too, and wax mustaches, a whole family of the stuff. It sat right at the register waiting for the exact moment a kid spotted it and had to have it. Number 21, Necco wafers. That tight cylinder of thin, chalky discs wrapped in wax paper had been around since the 1800s, but in the 1970s, it was still a checkout regular. 8 pastel colors, each a different flavor, and every kid had strong opinions. The chocolate and the wintergreen were prizes. The licorice black one and that odd clove flavor got flicked across the back seat when Mom was not looking. They were dry, faintly sweet, and snapped in half if you bit wrong, and half the fun was peeling the roll open one wafer at a time like a coin dispenser. A roll cost about a dime. Grandmothers loved them, which is exactly why kids were suspicious of them, and yet the roll still ended up on the belt more often than not. Number 20, Razzles. The slogan said it all. First it is a candy, then it is a gum. You popped 2 of the little pink discs in your mouth, expecting hard candy, and within about 30 seconds of chewing, the whole thing transformed into a wad of fruity bubble gum right there on your tongue. Kids were genuinely amazed by this every single time, like it was a magic trick that reset itself. The pouch came in that bright package that stood out on the rack, and a kid could get real mileage out of one at the register, holding it up and explaining the whole candy into gum thing to a mother who had heard it 40 times already. A pouch cost around 15 cents. It was 2 treats in one, which felt like a genuine bargain to a 9-year-old. First pattern break. Here is where the story gets a little darker and a lot more deliberate. None of these treats ended up at the checkout by accident. Grocery chains figured out in the 1960s and 1970s that the register was the single most valuable few feet of real estate in the entire store. It was the one place where every customer had to stop, stand still, and wait. So they built low racks right at the height of a child sitting in a shopping cart, and they filled them with bright colors and cheap prices. Store planners called it the impulse zone. Candy companies paid extra to be placed there. The whole thing was engineered around a simple truth. A tired mother at the end of a long shopping trip, with a whining kid and a line behind her, will often spend a nickel just to keep the peace. That was not a flaw in the design. That was the design. Number 19, the Marathon Bar. Ask anyone who grew up in the 1970s about the candy they miss most, and this braided chocolate rope comes up again and again. It was a long strand of caramel twisted into a lattice and coated in chocolate, stretched out to a full 8 inches so it looked enormous next to a regular candy bar. The red wrapper even had a ruler printed on the back so you could prove how long it was. The braid mattered because all those gaps meant it took forever to eat, and a slow candy bar was a good candy bar when you were a kid trying to make it last the whole ride home. It cost around 15 cents. It vanished from shelves at the start of the 1980s, and grown adults still write letters begging for it back. It is the one that got away. Number 18, Sixlets. Little candy-coated chocolate spheres, sold in a long cellophane tube that you tore open at one end and tipped straight into your mouth. They looked like a cheaper cousin of the fancier chocolate candies, and they kind of were, but that never mattered. What mattered was that a tube cost about a nickel, which put them squarely in the range of pocket change money a kid might actually have. The chocolate inside was more of a chocolate-flavored something than real chocolate, but under that crisp candy shell, it melted just enough. You could pour a whole tube in at once and cram your cheeks like a chipmunk or ration them out one at a time. Either way, they were the kind of low-stakes treat a mom said yes to without even really deciding. Number 17, Bit-O Honey. This was the candy that tested your commitment. A honey-flavored taffy studded with tiny bits of almond, cut into little squares, each one individually wrapped inside the bigger package. And it was hard. Cold weather turned it into a jaw workout that could genuinely loosen a filling if you were careless. But once it warmed up against your teeth, it turned chewy and rich, that honey and almond flavor stretching out longer than almost anything else on the rack. Kids loved it precisely because it lasted, because a single bit-o-honey square could occupy an entire episode of whatever was on TV. It cost about a dime. It was the opposite of instant gratification, which made it strangely perfect for stretching one small treat across a whole afternoon. Number 16, Zots. This one had a secret weapon, and every kid who knew about it treated it like classified information. From the outside, Zots looked like an ordinary hard candy wrapped in twisted plastic. You sucked on it, tasted the fruit flavor, and then right when you least expected it, the center cracked open and released a burst of fizzy sour powder that foamed up on your tongue like a tiny volcano. First-timers made a face. Veterans lived for it. That fizzy center was pure sherbet powder, and it turned an unremarkable candy into an event. A little sleeve of them cost a dime. Kids would dare each other to keep a straight face while the fizz kicked in, and that dare was worth every penny of allowance a kid had. Number 15, Charleston Chew. A long bar of fluffy, aerated nougat dipped in chocolate, sold in vanilla, chocolate, and strawberry. At room temperature, it was soft and pleasantly chewy. But the real move, the thing older kids passed down like sacred knowledge, was to put it in the freezer first. Frozen solid, a Charleston Chew became a weapon. You could whack it against the edge of a table and shatter it into jagged, ice-cold shards that you ate one frozen splinter at a time. It was loud, it was a little bit destructive, and it was the best possible use of a candy bar a 9-year-old could imagine. It cost around 15 cents. Even at the register, unfrozen and ordinary, a kid grabbed it knowing exactly what it was going to become the second they got home. Second pattern break. Let us talk about the money, because the economics of the checkout aisle were built entirely around a child's budget. In the 1970s, a nickel or a dime was real spending power for a kid. Allowances ran maybe a quarter to $1 a week for most families, and almost every treat on this rack was priced to fit inside that. A nickel candy, a dime candy, a penny piece from the bin. The whole system was calibrated so that a kid could afford the treat with their own money, or more often so the price was low enough that mom could not really justify saying no. What is a nickel, after all? But multiply that nickel across every trip, across a whole neighborhood of kids, across a decade, and you understand why those little racks were worth fighting over. The candy companies were not selling sugar. They were selling the one thing a kid could buy with the change in their own pocket. And that feeling of buying it yourself was half the magic. Number 14, bottle caps. Little candy discs pressed into the shape of a soda bottle cap, each flavor mimicking a different soft drink. Cola, root beer, orange, cherry, grape, and lemon lime. And the wild part is that they actually tasted like soda, that tangy, fizzy sweet bite somehow captured in a chalky little tablet. For a kid, drinking soda was often a special occasion thing, so a candy that let you taste all 6 flavors at once felt like getting away with something. You would sort them by flavor, save your favorite for last, trade the root beer ones to your friend who somehow liked them. A roll cost around a dime. They came in that bright package that looked like a stack of caps, and they were an easy sell at the register because they were basically soda without the can mom had already said no to. Number 13, Chuckles. A little cardboard tray holding 5 big, sugar-dusted jelly candies in a row: cherry, lemon, lime, orange, and licorice. Every kid had a system. You ate your favorites first and left the black licorice ones sitting there in the tray, sometimes forever, an unwanted survivor that migrated to the bottom of a coat pocket. They were soft, sticky, coated in coarse sugar crystals that clung to your fingers, and they had a satisfying chew that pulled just a little. A pack cost about a dime. Grown-ups genuinely liked them, which is part of why they sat at the checkout, but a kid could be talked into one too, if only for the sugar crust and the small daily ceremony of deciding which color died first. Number 12, Now and Later. The name was the whole promise. These were square, individually wrapped taffy pieces that started out hard as a rock, so hard you were supposed to let them soften in your mouth before you dared to chew. Eat some now, save some for later, that was the pitch, and the flat rectangular pack was built to be rationed. The fruit flavors were intense: cherry, apple, grape, banana, that artificial in the best way punch that coated your whole mouth. Bite one too early and you risked your teeth. Wait too long and the flavor faded. Timing a now and later was a genuine childhood skill. A pack cost around a dime, and because there were so many pieces inside, it felt like the best value on the entire rack to a kid doing the math. Number 11, the Astro Pop. This is the one that glowed. A tall, three-layered lollipop shaped like a rocket, coming to a sharp point at the top, striped in bright colors that seemed to light up under the store's fluorescent bulbs. It was cherry, passion fruit, and pineapple stacked in cone-shaped layers, and it was enormous, the kind of lollipop that took genuine dedication to finish. The pointed tip was a little dangerous, and every kid knew someone whose mom had confiscated one for exactly that reason, which of course only made it more desirable. It cost around 15 cents. It stood up tall on the rack while the other candy lay flat, and a kid would zero in on that rocket shape from 3 aisles away and start the campaign to get one before they had even reached the register. Third, pattern, break. Here is the part the candy companies were very quiet about. All of this ran on sugar, pure and simple, and the 1970s was the decade when the first real warnings started to surface. Dentists were seeing more cavities in children than ever. The word was starting to spread that all this cheap, colorful, checkout aisle sugar had a cost that showed up later, in the dentist's chair, in the doctor's office. But here is what almost nobody knew at the time. Some of these candies were engineered specifically to stick, to dissolve slowly, to keep the sugar bathing your teeth as long as possible, because a longer-lasting candy felt like better value to a kid and a parent. Slow was a selling point. Slow was also exactly the wrong thing for a child's teeth. The industry sold duration as generosity, and a generation of kids paid for it, one filling at a time. Nobody put that on the wrapper. Number 10, Fun Dip, or Lickmade as most kids in the 1970s knew it. This was barely a candy and entirely a delivery system for flavored sugar. The pouch held little packets of tart, colored powder, cherry, grape, and that impossible-to-name blue one, along with a hard white candy stick called a Lick-a-Stix. You licked the stick, dunked it in the powder, and licked the powder off over and over until your tongue was stained a color not found in nature. And when the stick ran out or got too soggy, you just tipped the whole packet straight into your mouth. It was, without exaggeration, spoonfuls of flavored sugar sold to children, and children knew it, and that was exactly the appeal. A pouch cost around 15 cents. It was the treat that most honestly admitted what all the others were really about. Number 9, Sugar Daddy and Sugar Babies. The Sugar Daddy was a big slab of caramel on a stick, and it came with a warning built into its own design. This thing did not let go. Bite down too eagerly, and it would grab a loose tooth or a filling and take it as a souvenir. So kids learned to lick it and gnaw it slowly, which meant a single sugar daddy could last most of a Saturday. The sugar babies were the bite-sized version, little caramel nuggets in a yellow box you could pour by the handful. Between the two, a kid could get an entire day of chewing out a pocket change. A sugar daddy cost about a dime. It was the candy your dentist warned you about specifically by name, and kids at the checkout wanted it anyway, tooth risk and all. Number 8. Atomic Fireballs. This was the dare candy, the one that separated the tough kids from the tourists. A jawbreaker-sized ball of cinnamon so aggressively hot that most kids could only hold it in their mouth for a few seconds before pulling it out, red-faced, to let it cool on a napkin. Then they popped it right back in. The whole experience was a cycle of suffering and pride, and the bragging rights went to whoever could keep it in the longest without spitting it out. As the fire faded, the ball shrank layer by layer, changing color as it went, until you were left with a tiny, sweet core that felt like a reward for surviving. They cost a couple cents each from the bin, or a dime for a little box. Kids bought them purely to test each other, and the register was the front line. Number 7. Pixie Sticks. If Fun Dip was honest about being sugar, Pixie Sticks did not even bother with a stick. It was a paper straw filled end to end with pure flavored sugar, and you tore the top off and poured it straight down your throat. That was the entire product. Sweet, sour, intensely colored, and gone in one head-tipped back gulp that left you coughing on a little cloud of powder. Kids came in every size, from short, little single straws, sold for a penny or two, up to the giant ones. As long as your forearm, that felt like winning the lottery. They cost anywhere from a penny to a dime, depending on the size. Any parent who has ever watched a child inhale a giant Pixie Sticks and then try to sit still in a shopping cart understands exactly what those things did. The kids did not care. They wanted the big one. 4th pattern break. Now for the strangest chapter in checkout candy history, the urban legends. In the mid-1970s, a new soft bubble gum came out, and almost immediately a rumor started spreading on playgrounds across America that it contained spider eggs, that the softness came from something unnatural and horrifying. There was no truth to it whatsoever, but it moved kid to kid, school to school, faster than any advertisement ever could. Around the same time, the myth about Pop Rocks and soda, supposedly making a child's stomach explode, was tearing through the country, complete with a specific rumor about a famous commercial kid meeting a terrible end. Also completely false. The kid was fine and lived for decades after. But here is the fascinating part. These rumors did not kill the candies. They made them legendary. A treat that might be dangerous, that your mom did not fully understand, was exactly the treat a kid wanted most. Number 6. Bubble Yum. This was the gum at the center of that spider egg legend, and it earned the rumor by being genuinely revolutionary. Before it arrived in 1975, bubble gum was hard, a jaw-cracking chunk you had to soften up before you could do anything with it. Bubble Yum came out soft, chewable the instant it hit your mouth, and it blew enormous bubbles with almost no effort. Kids were stunned. It felt like the future. The company had to take out newspaper ads just to swear there were no spider eggs in it, which of course made every kid want it even more. It came in that flat pack of soft cubes, and a pack cost around 15 cents. It was the gum that made all the old hard bubble gums feel like relics overnight, and the checkout rack could barely keep it stocked. Number 5. Wacky packages. Not everything at the register was edible, and this one proved a treat did not have to be candy to make a kid beg. Wacky packages were sticker cards that parodied real grocery products, turning familiar brand names and logos into gross, funny, fake versions that kids found absolutely hilarious. They came in a wax pack, sometimes with a flat stick of gum inside, and the real prize was the sticker, which kids peeled and slapped onto notebooks, lockers, bike frames, and little brothers. Trading them was a whole underground economy. A pack cost around 15 cents. The genius was that they made fun of the exact products stacked on the shelves all around the store, so a kid stuck in the checkout line had a rack of the real thing right there to compare them to. They were pocket money rebellion. Number 4, the candy necklace. Wearable candy was a stroke of marketing genius, and every kid saw right through it and wanted one anyway. A stretchy, elastic cord strung with pastel candy beads that you wore around your neck or wrapped around your wrist. And then, throughout the day, you just bent your head down and bit one off. By the afternoon, it was a soggy, sticky mess, and the string had left a faint colored ring on your neck. But that was proof you had committed. It was candy and jewelry in one, a treat you got to wear like a badge, and for a certain age of kid, there was nothing cooler. It cost about a dime. It hung on the rack in bright loops, and mothers bought them constantly because a kid who is busy eating a necklace is a kid who is standing quietly in line. Number 3, Pop Rocks. This is the one wrapped in the most famous myth of all, and it deserved every bit of the legend. Pop Rocks were carbonated candy, little pebbles of hard sugar with pressurized carbon dioxide trapped inside, so the moment they hit the moisture in your mouth, they crackled and popped and fizzed against your tongue in a way no candy ever had before. It felt like your mouth was full of tiny firecrackers. Kids were genuinely amazed and slightly scared, which is the perfect combination. The rumor that mixing them with soda would make your stomach explode was pure playground fiction, but it was so widespread that the product actually got pulled from many shelves for years and became a semi-mythical thing kids traded stories about. A pack cost around a quarter. When they came back, the begging started all over again. Number 2, Jawbreakers. The giant kind, the ones the size of a golf ball that came one to a package or loose from a big glass jar by the register. A jawbreaker was not a snack. It was a project. It was so large you could not fit it fully in your mouth, so you rolled it around your cheek, pulled it out to check the color, and put it back in, over and over, for days. Because that was the magic. Layer by layer, it changed color as it slowly dissolved, and the whole appeal was seeing how many colors you could get through before it finally shrank down to a tiny hard seed. Kids compared theirs, held them up to the light, argued about how many layers were left. One cost about a dime and could genuinely last a week. Nothing else on the rack gave a kid that kind of return. Number 1, Bazooka Bubblegum. At the top of the list is the pink rectangle that defined an entire childhood. Bazooka was a chunk of hard, sweet bubblegum wrapped in red, white, and blue wax paper, and it sold for a penny or two, which made it the single most affordable treat at the register. But nobody was really buying it for the gum, which lost its flavor in about 90 seconds. They were buying it for the tiny comic strip folded up inside, starring an eye-patched kid named Bazooka Joe. You unwrapped it, read the little comic, and then, best of all, you saved up the comics because the back of the wrapper offered mail-away prizes. A stack of comics and a little bit of cash could get you a real toy sent to your own mailbox with your own name on it. That was the whole dream, right there in a penny piece of gum. It sat in a jar by the register, cheap enough that any kid could buy one and any parent would say yes, and it made every single trip to the store end on a small note of hope. Here is my challenge. Find one of these this week. The Necco wafers, the Now and Later, the Bazooka gum, with the little comic still tucked inside. Buy it, unwrap it, and see if it takes you right back to standing in that checkout line, holding it up while Mom counted her change. Then tell me in the comments which one you begged for hardest. I want to know if the marathon bar gets more love than the wax bottles, and whether anyone else out there still remembers saving Bazooka Joe comics for a prize that took 6 weeks to arrive. Because these were not just candy, they were the taste of being a kid, standing in line, believing that the best part of the whole trip was still yet to come.